Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Ryan Wormeli, joined on this Thursday NFL season night opener by Andrew Erickson and Pat Fitzmaurice. Fellas, we are here. I've said that a few times in the last few weeks. Like, we finally arrived. Football is almost back in our lives. Now it really is. It will be back in a matter of mere hours. There are no more sleeps until the season returns. I, of course, had to wear my Ravens polo for those watching on YouTube to support the team tonight. I'm assuming I won't be able to wear it tomorrow morning because I will be disappointed after tonight's game. So I had to get it in today. Erickson, can you tell us about the jersey you are rocking here in honor of the start of the season?
Oh, so I'm rocking lucky number 13, Gabe Davis Buffalo Bills jersey, because week one means one thing: victory lap season. So this is in honor of Gabe Davis and that massive Thursday night game he had a couple years ago where he's vaulting up the wide receiver rankings just to disappoint us all. So remember, week one, don't get carried away. Don't get carried away.
It wasn't even week one. It was drive one. And everyone was like, oh, it's over. Like, we nailed it on Gabe Davis. That was a very fun time as somebody who actually was very heavily invested in Gabe Davis.
Everybody, I mean, we were drafting him in the fourth round as a number 2 receiver on the Bills. Just didn't pan out.
Fitz, how excited are you? What's your feeling like? Is it more anticipation? Is it more excitement? Is it more nerves about, the Packers have expectations? What's your mindset going into week one here?
Yeah, a little of everything. Just really excited to be watching meaningful games again. We need new data. We've been talking about the same. I've been reciting the same Chase Brown stats all offseason, as you well know, Worm. So, we need new inputs here. And I'm really excited about it. And I don't know what Erickson's talking about. No one in the fantasy community ever overreacts to week one. So everyone's calm and measured. So
they definitely don't famously call it overreaction week. So we'll disagree with Erickson there. For everybody listening, this is going to be our Thursday show this year. It'll be myself, Erickson, and Fitz every single Thursday all season long. It's going to be a start-sit show. We might throw in some player debates about, your waiver wire ad versus maybe a guy who's in that flex range. We'll have some flex questions. We'll have some player position questions. We'll have some longer debates. We'll have some shorter ones. But yeah, it's going to generally be what you would expect from a start-sit show. We're also going to do a touchdown calls contest against the listeners. We'll do that at the end of the show. So stick around for our picks for a touchdown. We'll kind of split it between the three of us, each taking a position each different week. But yeah, this is going to be what it's going to look like. So I hope everybody enjoys it. Feel free to give us feedback early on, as it's sort of a new format and a new group of us doing this show. But we're hoping that you guys like it and we make some good calls here on the show throughout the year. Quick reminder for everyone that all of our rankings can be found at fantasypros.com/rankings. We've got tiers there. We've got week one rankings there now too. Of course, it's been draft rankings most of the summer. We've now, of course, made the switch to week one. Let's start off at the top of the show here, guys, with sort of our plant your flag players. You can consider this something like the must start player of the week, the guy that these guys really believe you need to be starting this week who aren't obvious. We're not going to be picking players in the top 24 at their position. So guys who are kind of outside that range, or at the very least in the back end of that range, certainly not inside the top 15 or anything like that. That is who we are planting our flag on. Fitz, let's start with you. Who is your plant your flag player for week one?
Javonte Williams. I think he is going to be on sort of the flex bubble for a lot of people this week, and I think people should start him. I've been really excited about his upside in the passing game. Denver had a league-high 153 running back targets last year. Sean Payton's offenses have always involved the running backs heavily in the passing game, going all the way back to Reggie Bush, Darren Sproles, Alvin Kamara, of course. Since 2011, hat tip to J.J. Zacharyson for this stat, Sean Payton's teams account for 8 of the 20 highest running back target shares in the NFL. So there is ample pass catching upside for Javonte. Oh, and by the way, Bo Nix has been this short passing ball control quarterback throughout his college career, and I expect him to be that kind of quarterback in the NFL too. But there was some underrated workhorse usage for Javonte Williams last year. Coming off that major 2022 knee injury, they used him pretty lightly in the early weeks of the season. But from week 7 to week 16, a 10-game sample, he averaged 18.9 touches a game, 16 carries, 2.9 catches. So if we get that kind of usage from Javonte again with the pass catching upside he has, I mean, we could get a top 10 running back season from Javonte Williams.
One piece of advice I've been trying to give newer managers this week is don't be afraid to start guys that you didn't draft into your starting spots. The draft is over where you took these guys is, I mean, it can somewhat inform your decision making. If you took a guy early, it's usually because you like him, but don't be afraid to mix it up and don't just go with sort of the default starting lineup of the order you drafted guys. Javonte Williams, unless you did a 0 RB build, probably your RB3. Maybe if you went heavy on RB, might even be an RB4. Those guys, you shouldn't be afraid. I've been using kind of like Jerome Ford and Chuba Hubbard as these other types of examples like that, where now that we're in week 1, those rankings look different than they did in draft season. I think Javonte is a good example of that, where he probably isn't one of the top 2 running backs a lot of teams drafted, again, depending on league format and what your strategy was. But that doesn't mean he shouldn't be a starter right away in week 1. It's a whole different season than it was in August. Erickson, what do you think of the Javonte call?
I like it a lot. I think that he offers a really high floor with the amount of volume he's going to get. I think that in week 1, it's okay to play it safe with some of these better volume bets. Again, we're going to see a lot of wide receivers that we drafted high just straight out bust in week 1 because it's just the volatility of the position. Whereas using running backs in your flex, I think you're locking in more production that way. And maybe you're letting your opponents take the risk with some of these high upside wide receivers. Again, it's so easy to make the case for every wide receiver in the upside case. It really is. But a lot of times you don't talk about, well, this guy could get 2 points. Javonte Williams, I feel pretty safe. He's going to probably finish between 10 and 15 fantasy points, and then layering in, can he score a touchdown? Okay, now we're up to 20 fantasy points with Javonte. So I think he's a great start as an RB2 or a flex.
Yeah, Fitz. I mean, Erickson just mentioned the floor with Javonte. There's ceiling too, right? I mean, if he is the preferred target in the passing game for Sean Payton and Bo Nix, and if he does get this workhorse role, there, I mean, the ceiling is there for him to have an RB1 week right off the bat, I think. And the other thing, too, is that Seattle, we've talked about it a lot this offseason, is going to run a lot more plays this year with their new coaching staff. So that just means theoretically more fantasy points to be scored on both sides, because it would mean that Denver is maybe passing more to catch up, which could be more catches for Javonte.
Absolutely. I mean, he's kind of game script proof, which is nice. If Denver's in a tight game or ahead, like he's going to be involved in the running game. If they're behind, he's going to get a lot of dump off passes or some, at least enough to protect him, even if Denver is in sort of a run unfriendly game script. And we do know Jaleel McLaughlin's going to be involved too. Like I like Jaleel also, and I've been trying to come out of every draft with one or the other. But yeah, Javonte's upside is pretty good, regardless of what sort of game script the Broncos encounter against the Seahawks.
Erickson, who's your plant your flag must start of the week?
Going with wide receiver T. Higgins for the Cincinnati Bengals facing my New England Patriots. The Patriots are massive dogs on the road in Cincinnati. So there's this twofold. So you have the Jamar Chase situation going on with his contract. The latest update we have was Wednesday. He was limited at practice, so he was out there, but we're not really sure how involved he's going to be. Still hasn't signed a new contract. I think that's going to get done. We saw the Bengals do this before the Joe Burrow extension. They basically signed it right before Thursday night kickoff because they had to take away the attention from the Chiefs. They have to make it about the Cincinnati Bengals. So I ultimately think that this deal gets done, but that still brings up question marks about how much Jamar Chase will play if he is in game shape because he's missed so much time. He hasn't been practicing in full throughout the entire preseason for the Bengals. So for me, that's green lights for T. Higgins, whether Chase is playing or not. If Chase is out there, could be more in a decoy role. Okay, that means more targets for T. Higgins, who is in a contract year. He needs to put up numbers this season. And when we've seen T. Higgins at his best, it's when Jamar Chase has either missed time or has been limited. 2022, a 4-game stretch with Chase out of the lineup, T. Higgins averaged almost 19 fantasy points per game. So I think in this particular matchup against the Patriots, I think their defense is not as good as it was last year. Christian Gonzalez is coming back from an injury. He only played 3 games as a rookie. He's their number 1 cornerback, and he's been up and down in training camp. And this has been going against players, Patriots wide receivers. When they had the joint practices with the Eagles, Christian Gonzalez got burned by A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. More of the caliber of who he's going to face against the Cincinnati Bengals. So for me, I think T. Higgins, this is a good spot for him. The Bengals heavy favorites at home. Joe Burrow and him have been connecting throughout training camp. So I think this is a good spot to play T. Higgins. I know that he's been drafted kind of as a wide receiver 3 flex play. Again, looking for receivers with floors and ceilings. A good combination. I think T. Higgins has that this week.
Do you think, Erickson, you mentioned the defense for the Patriots. They were obviously very good last year. Do you think that this is going to be a defense we're going to want to see teams kind of pick on throughout the year? Or do you just particularly like this matchup for Higgins in week 1?
Maybe not pick on, because you really want defenses that give up a lot of explosive plays. And I think that the Patriots will probably still try to play conservative, but I don't think it's a defense that you have to avoid where, oh no, they're playing the Patriots. They can't be able to run the football. Christian Barrymore is not playing. He's their best defensive tackle. and he's on the NFI list. That's a massive hole in their interior, which was one of the best things about their defense last year was the run defense. And the other thing is pass rush. Yes, they have some good secondary pieces like Gonzalez, but he's still really young and still a little bit raw. They don't have a pass rush. They just traded away Matt Judon. I know he didn't play a lot last year, but I just don't see a scenario where they are locking down opposing offenses, especially losing Bill Belichick as the play caller. I know that Belichick has lost his fastball maybe as a GM head coach, but as a defensive play caller, I think he can still call it with the best. So I think you're going to see that, especially early on, as Gerard Mayo looks to pick up the slack and try to carry over how good that defense was last year. I just don't see it, especially against the Bengals. The Bengals are on another tier. I mean, the Bengals are looking at the Super Bowl. The Patriots were picking in the top 3 for a reason.
Fitz, where are you drafting? Or soon not drafting. It's transitioning into week 1 mode here still. Where are you ranking T. Higgins?
Right now, he's in wide receiver 3 territory, but I do have to move him up. Like, I think there is going to be involvement. Maybe a limited snap count for Jamar Chase. It only makes sense if he has not been practicing in full. So I think Erickson is spot on with this. But I am a little concerned that Jamar Chase is going to be jealous that Erickson is now giving attention to T. Higgins after Chase has been Erickson's 101 all off season. I'm a little worried he's going to feel jilted.
Well, no, don't worry. They'll make Jamar Chase will catch touchdown. They're going to put him in the red zone packages.
NFL Week 1 is here, and a new season means new ways to get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Fans have spoken. We want to bet on touchdowns. DraftKings heard us and is delivering. DraftKings Sportsbook is the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like picking a player to score a touchdown. It all kicks off tonight with the Ravens taking on the 2-time defending Super Bowl champion Chiefs in Kansas City, with the Chiefs laying a field goal at home. The Ravens are looking for revenge after getting upset in Baltimore last January. 2 of the 3 best quarterbacks in football square off with a total at 47 on DraftKings. That's gone up a little from where it started. Obviously, you'll all be watching this amazing season opener, but are you planning to do a touchdown dance of your own? New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $250 in bonus bets instantly, plus 1 month of NFL Plus Premium on us. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code FantasyPros. That's code FantasyPros for new customers to get $250 in bonus bets when you bet just $5 and get 1 month of NFL Plus Premium on us. Offer ends September 19th, only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. All right, so our kind of must-start, plant your flag players, Javonte Williams and T. Higgins. Let's get into some start-sit player debates. I try to find players that were roughly ranked around the same spots in our expert consensus rankings and according to our Fantasy Pro staff rankings. So we'll do some running back debates. We'll do some wide receiver debates. We've also got some quarterback, tight end, flex debates as well. The first one that I want to throw out here, guys, Jaylen Warren versus Brian Robinson Jr. Brian Robinson is somebody that I was very aggressively drafting this summer. Warren, not as much, mostly just because I was a little nervous about the injury and just nervous about who knows what the heck Arthur Smith is going to want to do on a week in and week out basis, but obviously a very talented player and somebody that in the past we've liked quite a bit. So Erickson, I'll start with you. Jaylen Warren versus Brian Robinson. Who are you starting in week 1?
I absolutely love this debate because Tom Strachan, who I share a FFPC team with, he hit me up earlier this week asking about this exact question about should we start Jaylen Warren or Brian Robinson? So this one hits very close to home for me. And I'm basically just parroting what I responded in Slack to Tom. To me, it comes down to Warren and the hamstring injury. He's been limited to practice, but everything he said, he's talked about, hey, I feel good. If they had a real game during the preseason, he would have played. So I think I'm okay with the preseason injury, the hamstring. I think that he's going to be okay. Whereas Brian Robinson, I think that there's a real concern with game script. The Commanders are playing on the road against Tampa Bay, against a usually pretty stout run defense. Brian Robinson projects to be the early down runner for the Commanders. It's a shaky offensive line. What do we see with bad offensive lines? They usually don't travel well on the road. So I think Brian Robinson has a very scary floor this week if he doesn't find the end zone. Again, that was the bullish case on Brian Robinson. Oh, he's going to get the red zone opportunities. Well, how many points are the Commanders going to score in the rookie quarterback's first start on the road? I wouldn't be super bullish on this offense putting up an amazing stat line, particularly in week 1. So for me, I'm going to go with Jaylen Warren. Again, the injury, if there was no injury, this would be easy for me. But I think I still lean towards Jaylen Warren. He's more involved in the passing game. I feel confident that he's going to at least offer a floor as a receiver out of the backfield, especially with Russell Wilson starting, not Justin Fields, for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So for me, it's going to be Jaylen Warren.
Erickson, how much do you weigh sort of the historic organizational infrastructure of a team like Tampa Bay that, like you said, they have been very stout against the run in recent years. Defense doesn't always translate year over year, though. It's a new season. Are you trying to project out what teams you think will be particularly good, not just overall, but against the run, against the pass? Or are you weighing more heavily, we've seen Tampa Bay do this before, we know that they are typically good against the run?
Well, I think it goes down to personnel and coaches. Todd Bowles is the guy there that runs the defense. So I don't think it's by mistake that their run defense is always good because Todd Bowles is the head coach, defensive coordinator, etc. Because that's who they draft. They invest in defensive tackles. So the things that change is during the season you have to pay attention to when guys get hurt, because that's when you see massive changes in how good teams are against the run, how good teams are against the pass. But traditionally, Todd Bowles has been, hey, we're going to stop the run, throw all over us. That's the defense that he traditionally plays. So until I see something very convincing otherwise, and coaches know this too, they know that when you play Tampa Bay, the game script is not, okay, let's run the ball up the middle. It's let's attack these cornerbacks. And their secondary is still pretty leaky. So that's how I think they would go into this game with Cliff Kingsbury. They want to showcase Jayden Daniels. So I just don't see this as a Brian Robinson game per se versus a Jaylen Warren, where I know he's going to be involved. I know they want to run the football. Even if he's in a split with Najee, he's going to catch passes out of the backfield. So I still feel so much safer about Jaylen Warren's floor versus Brian Robinson, who he could get games scripted out. If they fall behind 14-0, is Brian Robinson on the field? That's concerning for me.
Fitz, who do you like, Warren or Robinson?
Oh, look at Erickson plunging headfirst into the Arthur Smith offense without fear, hoping that pool hasn't been drained the night before as he, goes headfirst off the high dive. So I'm going with Brian Robinson here. And I do acknowledge Erickson's point about the Todd Bowles defense, and I have Robinson ranked a little lower than I might otherwise. I've got him at RB30 this week. But I expect Robinson and Jayden Daniels to have this symbiotic relationship this year. We know that mobile quarterbacks really spike the rushing efficiency of their running backs, and Jayden Daniels is a very dangerous running quarterback. I think that's going to help open up lanes for Brian Robinson. And a good running game obviously helps keep the pass rush at bay by making defenses honor the possibility of the run. So I think these guys are going to be good for each other this year. Hopefully we see that right off the bat. With Jayden Daniels making his first NFL start, it would be smart for Cliff Kingsbury to protect his young quarterback by mixing in a healthy dose of running plays. So I think whether the run is working or not, Brian Robinson is going to get double-digit carries, maybe as many as 15, 18 in this game. As for Warren, I do worry a little bit about the hamstring injury. Mike Tomlin has assured us he's going to be active, but we don't know for sure whether he's going to be full go or if he's going to be on sort of a pitch count. We are probably going to see Najee handle most of the rushing load, and we might see an annoying amount of Cordero Patterson in the backfield for this one. So, I'm just a little worried. Man, I'd really rather not start any Pittsburgh Steelers in week 1 until I see exactly what it looks like with Arthur Smith at the controls.
Let's go to our next running back debate. And Fitz, I'll start with you this time. J.K. Dobbins versus Ezekiel Elliott. I had a very clear favorite of these two during draft season. That was Dobbins because I liked the upside play. I thought he was going later. He was going to be an easy cut if he was bad, all that stuff. But now that we're here playing the games week 1, I think it's a lot closer, something closer to a toss-up. Dobbins or Elliott, who do you like, Fitz?
Yeah, I like Zeke. There's been this undercurrent of Rico Dowdle buzz in the fantasy community over the last week or two. And I'm not saying that the Dowdle supporters are necessarily wrong that he's going to have a prominent role, but let's face it, Zeke has generated a lot of goodwill in the Cowboys organization, I think, over the years. And this is a hard backfield to pin down, but I am expecting Zeke to outsnap and outtouch Rico Dowdle in week 1 as sort of the dean of the Cowboys running back room. Tough matchup against the Browns, but here's the thing. Zeke might be able to bolster his floor with his pass catching. And I know that's not really the first thing we think of with Zeke traditionally, but he did have 51 receptions in his one season of banishment to New England last year. And I know that was sort of out of necessity with what the Patriots offense had devolved into last year. But I do think Zeke is going to have a couple of grabs. I just bet him for over 8.5 receiving yards on DraftKings. I thought that's a pretty low bar for him to clear. Dobbins is interesting. And like I took him in one of my last drafts because I was starting to have some FOMO, worried that, after largely ignoring this guy because I generally don't like betting on players running backs who've had major knee injuries and Achilles tears. But like, I don't know. What if he is a medical marvel and can somehow return to like 90% of what he had been at Ohio State when he was just this force of nature? So I don't know. I'm kind of expecting it to be a dose of both Dobbins and Gus Edwards for the Chargers. Maybe, I don't know, 60% Gus, 40% Dobbins to start, but I could be wrong about that. Bottom line, I am expecting Zeke to get more week one touches, I think, than J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah, if like Men in Black could do the like brain, washing, you forget your memory. I don't know what that device is called. I haven't seen those movies in a while. They're good movies, but if they could do that to you and you just forgot about Dobbins' injury history, but you still knew this is a running back in this offense, and just watching the preseason and like to training camp videos and reading the reports, you would be really excited about Dobbins, right? Like that is really the only red flag is that injury history, and it's a big one. We talked about it all August. It's a very big red flag, but all the current knowledge we have for everything we've seen in August and what we've read about and heard, I think it's reasonable to be really excited. These guys are back-to-back in ECR this week, by the way, RB38 and RB39. The other thing is too, Vegas, like they did finish the season really strong defensively, so maybe that carries over here into week one. And, Herbert was somewhat limited this, preseason, all that stuff. Erickson, what do you think about this one, Zeke versus Dobbins?
I think it's pretty close as well. I think that both running backs are kind of in somewhat similar situations where you have a committee approach. We're not really sure how the backfields are going to shake out. You have Dowdle, you have Gus Edwards as other players that we expect to see touches in their respective backfields. You have tough matchups. Browns on the road for the Cowboys are underdogs against the Browns. Not a great matchup. The Raiders, like you said, Worm, good defense last year. We're expecting that to carry over to this season, but the Chargers are favorites, even though they're playing it home, even though they don't really have any home field advantage. They are favored to win, so we'll see how that ends up going out. But I just like Dobbins because he's a more explosive guy, even coming off the torn Achilles. I think that he is, bold take, J.K. Dobbins is more explosive than Ezekiel Elliott. I said it. So for me, if I'm really not convinced that one guy's going to get so much more work than the other guy, I think I'm going to go with the team that I believe is going to run the football, which I think it's going to be the Chargers. I think they're going to run the ball more than the Cowboys will. And I think Dobbins can take advantage of a 10 to 15 touch workload better than Ezekiel Elliott can. And the one thing that has been undersold with Dobbins, I think, is his potential pass catching. Because every time in training camp, and Worm, tell me if I'm wrong, they would rave about how good J.K. Dobbins was a pass catcher. But we all knew that it was never going to transpire into anything because we know Lamar Jackson doesn't throw to the running backs. Well, now we have a different offense a little bit now with Justin Herbert, a not as mobile quarterback coming off a foot injury. Well, maybe we get dump off passes to J.K. Dobbins for the first time in his NFL career. What does that translate into? So for me, these Dobbins weeks are precious because we don't know how long this Achilles is going to hold off for. So I want to take advantage of it. It's a good matchup. They're at home. They're favorites. I'm not afraid of Gus Edwards. So give me J.K. Dobbins.
That's a good point on the pass catching. I always wondered how much of that was Lamar versus Greg Roman, because there was talk going into last season that Monken was going to throw it at Dobbins more. And of course, we didn't get to see that play out because of how early the injury occurred. But there was that discussion of just the coaching change, not a quarterback change, would lead to more pass catching for the running backs. We'll never know, I suppose, for sure, how exactly that would have worked out if Dobbins was still there, since Gus Edwards is fine, but he's just not the same pass catcher, at least the way they talked about it, that Dobbins is. Let's go to a wide receiver debate here. Tank Dell versus Terry McLaurin. Two guys I was very happy to get in all of my drafts this year. Erickson, we'll go back to starting with you. Tank Dell versus Terry McLaurin. Who do you like here?
I'm going to go with Tank Dell because I just love this offensive environment situation. Colts, Texans, in a dome, massive total at 49.5 points. I just think that this is going to be a fireworks shootout between two AFC South teams. And I get that the Tank Dell projection, the targets, we don't know sure how it's going to work out. Well, if CJ Stroud throws 4 touchdowns, all Tank Dell has to do is catch a touchdown and boom, you're good to go. You don't have to worry about, okay, what are the targets going to be? So For me, I feel like I don't want to overthink this. Tank Dell is CJ Stroud's guy. We talked about Tank Dell as the great value pick among the Houston Texans receivers. So for me, again, going back to the Commanders matchup, look, they're playing on the road behind a shaky offensive line with a rookie quarterback making his first start. I don't want to, for me, I feel like I don't need to be overly bullish on the Commanders. What is it going to kill me to just wait a week to let Daniels prove to me, hey, he's ready to go in the NFL? Like, I don't feel like I need to have to force in these Commanders players in a matchup that is not ideal, I would say, for the most part. Yes, McLaurin projects as the target leader, so I think he does offer a floor here, but I think the ceiling play is still Tank Dell, because what if Tank Dell is the number one receiver for the Texans? What if he gets the favorable matchups with all these other receivers? Because if the Texans are going to score 35 points, well, chances are he's going to bring one, if not two, receivers with him, and one of those guys could easily be Tank Dell, whereas McLaurin, okay, 5 for 50. Great. Are you crazy about that? You love with that? Okay, it's okay, but I think Tank Dell is the higher ceiling, so I'm going to go with Dell in this explosive matchup.
You mentioned the main counterpoint I was going to make, which is we're reasonably certain Terry McLaurin is going to lead this team in targets. We're less certain what it's going to look like with Dell. So maybe that's the offense that I more want to wait and see which of the receivers I want to rank aggressively, especially if I like another guy like I do like McLaurin. Fitz, what do you think about Dell versus McLaurin?
Yeah, I've got a battle with Erickson again here because I see this as target ambiguity versus target certainty. And like Tank Dell is a really fun player, just so difficult to cover and certainly capable of making a couple splash plays that really ring the bell for his fantasy managers. But Dell is the number 3 receiver for the Texans. He has to share targets with Stefon Diggs and Nico Collins. Tank Dell probably isn't even going to be on the field when the Houston Texans are in 2 wide receiver sets. McLaurin, on the other hand, is the undisputed go-to receiver for the Commanders. 4 straight seasons with 1,000 or more receiving yards, 4 straight seasons with 77 or more catches. And now he gets to play with Jaden Daniels, the best quarterback he'll have ever played with in the NFL. McLaurin has managed to produce while playing with the likes of Kyle Allen and Carson Wentz and Taylor Heineke and Sam Howell. I'm really excited about McLaurin for this season. And I know there are going to be bumps for Jaden Daniels, as there are for pretty much all rookie quarterbacks, but the upside is really alluring here. And, I feel pretty good that McLaurin is going to get a minimum of like 7 or 8 targets this week, and I could see Tank Dell getting 3 or 4. Maybe he gets more than that. He could get 8 or 9 targets, but like the target distribution for the Texans, if all 3 of these receivers are healthy, is going to be really hard to pin down week to week.
Fitz, do you, kind of the way Erickson framed it, do you also see Dell as more of a ceiling play and McLaurin is the floor, or do you see ceiling with McLaurin this week in particular as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think safety is the more appealing thing with McLaurin. That you're going to get a good floor, because I think he is going to get those 8 or 9 targets and 4 or 5 catches. And Dell, I just think like the range of outcomes is all over the place. Could have a huge game, could be virtually a non-factor.
Erickson, let's go to the next debate here. Courtland Sutton, your guy, versus Josh Palmer, somebody I really liked this offseason. What do you think here?
So for me, it's Josh Palmer, because I think that both guys project as their number 1 wide receivers, at least in week 1. I'm going to take Josh Palmer over Ladd McConkey. We'll see how that goes throughout the season long targets, but that's Justin Herbert's guy. That's the only guy that has chemistry with Justin Herbert dating back the last couple of years. Ladd McConkey is a rookie making his first NFL start this week. So then when I look at the matchup specifically, looking at Seattle, what about this matchup with Denver facing the Seahawks, who have strong perimeter cornerbacks, 5th fewest points allowed to perimeter receivers last season, screams Sean Payton's going to go in and be like, we need to feed Courtland Sutton this week against Seahawks on the road. That doesn't make any sense to me. So we talked about liking Javonte a ton. I think they're going to feed the running backs, feed the tight ends. To me, this seems, hey, Courtland Sutton, like, go out there, you got paid. This isn't your week, man. We're not going to force you targets, especially with a guy like Sutton, who not really winning with separation at this point in his career, a little bit more of a contested catch guy, wins with slants over the middle. So he can do enough, but I just don't think this is a Sutton week. Whereas Josh Palmer, look at the Raiders. The Raiders are starting Jack Jones and Jacorian Bennett at cornerback. Jack Jones, the former Patriots cast-off, is starting for the Raiders at cornerback. I think the perimeter matchups is so much better for Josh Palmer. I think that he like Sutton, projects to be the number one receiver at least in week one. So I think it's Josh Palmer for me. I think he has more upside. Again, we're going back to the Chargers are favored to win this game. The Denver Broncos are not. They are favored to lose against the Seahawks on the road. That's a more hostile environment, in my opinion, than a nice comfy dome at home for the Chargers and Justin Herbert. So he's got the better quarterback. He's got the better matchup. It's Josh Palmer for me.
The one thing I will say on the matchup is Mike Macdonald, when he was defensive coordinator in Baltimore, it took several weeks before that defense to sort of coalesce and figure it out. It is a very complicated defense. It is a defense where if you don't know it like the back of your hand, you can be prone to breakdowns in the secondary. We saw that, if you remember that huge game for Tua in that Dolphins-Ravens game in week 2 a couple of years ago. That was right when Mike Macdonald was starting, and fans in Baltimore were like, very against this guy. And he was like, we're just figuring it out. It's going to take some time to sort of get this defense all on the same page. It really wasn't until they added Roquan Smith that it became this elite, like Death Star of a defense. And they don't have a Roquan Smith in Seattle. It's week 1. The secondary pieces are very talented, but they're younger. So maybe they don't pick it up immediately, this brand new defensive scheme and thought. So I'm very bullish on the Seahawks in general this year. And I'm bullish on the defense long term. I'm a little hesitant to assume this is going to be a very good defense right off the bat. I'm wondering if it might take a while. And it might be a defense that we can take advantage of in fantasy early on as people don't adjust to that because they just see Mike Macdonald and assume it's going to be good. I know you were talking more about the players in the secondary than Macdonald in general, but that's something that's kind of in the back of my mind with these early weeks. Fitz, do you like Courtland Sutton or Josh?
I think. I think that I agree with that. That there's definitely an opportunity. I just don't think that Courtland Sutton is the guy that would take advantage of that in this particular match. That's the only thing. Like, I think there will be holes in certain matchups with with the Seattle Seahawks, but I think it's more about the running backs. Like, how great is this run defense going to be for the Seahawks? So that's kind of where, and you brought up the Miami Dolphins example. I mean, Courtland Sutton doesn't fit what the Miami Dolphins do with speed.
Maybe Marvin Mims breaks a long one in this game.
That's what I would be more. Or I'd be less surprised if we saw Marvin Mims break off an 80-yard touchdown because there's a miscommunication in the secondary. I would expect that more than, Courtland Sutton, because Sutton needs targets. He needs volume, I think, to be successful. So I just wanted to say that.
No, that's fair. Fitz, what do you think about this one? Sutton versus Palmer.
Yeah, about those Raiders cornerbacks, Erickson. So Chargers rookie offensive tackle Joe Alt is making his NFL debut, and his assignment is to try to block Max Crosby in week 1. So Jack Jones might only have to stay with Josh Palmer for a second or two before Crosby is knocking Justin Herbert to the ground. We are in pretty murky territory with this one, I think. And like, I've got Sutton like 10 spots ahead of Josh Palmer in my rankings, and I'm going to have to fix that because I think this is a much closer call than that. It feels like Sutton has been sort of underrated throughout fantasy draft season. But a Bo Nix, Courtland Sutton pairing, just something about that doesn't feel right. Like Courtland Sutton, I know this pairing is like fish and cheese or steak and white wine. Like Sutton is this go up and get it receiver, this contested catch guy, just like it doesn't matter if he's covered, just throw it up to him. And Nix is this ball control passer who I think wants like timing routes. And so I don't know how it's going to work with Courtland Sutton. Yes, he's the seemingly undisputed number 1 receiver for the Broncos, but like, I don't know if that is going to equate to a 1,000-yard season. And I'm worried that I didn't take enough of Josh Palmer this summer in drafts. It's very possible that the Chargers' lead receiver this year is Palmer, albeit in a very run-heavy offense. But, there's something to be said for being Justin Herbert's lead receiver. So maybe I don't have Josh Palmer high enough. I do have this gap between the two of them. I'm going to say Sutton, but like I do not have any confidence in that call.
Erickson, just quickly, what do you think of Sutton for the full season? Not in this matchup in particular. Because I think to Fitz's point about him being undervalued, I don't know that we said his name once on any offseason show. Like, he was just very under-discussed, I think. So what do you think about Courtland Sutton this year?
I think that he's probably more of a bye-week fill-in type of player where throughout his NFL career, he hasn't really flashed that immense ceiling. And even though I was really high on a couple of years ago when they landed Russell Wilson, that never transpired. We really haven't seen him be a top 20 guy, I don't think, ever in fantasy. I mean, think about it. Last year, he scored 10 touchdowns and wasn't even a wide receiver too. So if his touchdowns come down, then what are you really winning with Sutton? I think from a bye week standpoint, yes, he's going to be perfect to fill in, give you some production as a wide receiver 3, but I don't know how high the ceiling is on a week-to-week basis with a rookie quarterback who, when you just talk about what type of receiver works best for Bo Nix number one receiver at Oregon was Troy Franklin, who looks nothing like Courtland Sutton at all. So Sean Payton likes Sutton because he's big. He likes Josh Reynolds because he's big and he can block. That's why they like these receivers. So yes, he is the number one, but what does the number one receiver on the Denver Broncos, led by Bo Nix, really translate into? And it's probably not that many fantasy points when it comes down to, especially on a weekly spike perspective.
Man, do I love watching football live. There's nothing in the world quite like walking into the stadium after an awesome tailgate in that crisp, refreshing fall weather. I haven't been able to make it out to a Broncos game since moving to Denver, but I plan to change that this year. And when I do, I'll be getting those tickets from Game Time. They've got a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't waste any time searching through hundreds or even thousands of tickets. The curations make it easier to save more on not just sports, but concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Two other features that I love for how much it takes the frustration out of ticket buying are Game Time seat views, showing your view from the seat before you buy, and all-in pricing, so I know the total upfront with no hidden fees. Game Time is simple to use, but more importantly, the app gives me all the information I need to make an easy ticket purchase. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code FANTASYPROS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code FANTASYPROS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, let's go to some quicker start-sit decisions here. We'll do another running back one. Jaleel McLaughlin, we've already talked about Javonte and really this whole Broncos offense, but Jaleel McLaughlin versus Rico Dowdle. Fitz, we'll start with you.
I'll take the NCAA's all-time leading rusher, please. Jaleel McLaughlin, pass-catching upside, really popped last year as an undrafted free agent and in somewhat limited action, but he's the clear number 2 for Denver, and Sean Payton always uses more than one back. We've seen fantasy relevance from multiple running backs in Payton's offenses, especially during his time with the Saints, where there'd be as many as 3 fantasy relevant guys. This year, I think it's Javonte and Jaleel. I'll take McLaughlin over Dowdle.
What side are you taking, Erickson?
Gonna hedge. So PPR, going McLaughlin, but in half PPR with the touchdowns are weighed more heavily because I just don't know what the touchdown upside with McLaughlin is, because I think that he might be third in the pecking order behind Javonte and potentially Audric Estime, who they also featured in the red zone a little bit during the preseason. So for me, in half PPR, I would go and take the plunge on a Rico Dowdle because, again, I like Dowdle more than Zeke in draft season. I think that he will be the Cowboys RB1. That's where I disagree a little bit with Fitz, but I understand he definitely comes with a much shakier floor in case, they get a 3-way committee with Dalvin Cook also involved, Zeke and Dowdle, and Dowdle's just rushing in between the 20s, and Zeke is getting the third down snaps, getting the red zone snaps, and then you're left holding the bag with Dowdle thinking, oh my God, what happened? So that's why perhaps PPR, I still think he has touchdown upside. He plays in the Cowboys offense, so I think he's going to score more points than Denver, even though both teams are playing on the road. So, but McLaughlin, I think the floor is just too high, especially in a full PPR.
Fitz at wide receiver, Brian Thomas Jr. versus Christian Watson. Who do you like?
Christian Watson. 2 big, fast guys. Give me the guy who we've seen before and who we've seen score touchdowns in bunches. And I know people are worried about how the targets are divided with the Green Bay receivers, but when Watson has shared a field with Jaden Reed and with Romeo Doubs, Watson has had the highest target share, and it's been north of 25%. So I think he's going to get his targets, and both of these guys have really appealing big play upside, but I think Watson's big play credentials are a little bit better established.
Erickson, you've been very in on Brian Thomas Jr. during draft season. Are you also in on him in week 1 over Watson?
100%. I like Brian Thomas. I do think this is Brian Thomas week. The week 1 breakout is coming here. They're playing the Miami Dolphins. Another game that I absolutely love. Bet the over. Shootout potential in Miami. It's him versus Gabe Davis for perimeter targets on the outside. He's taking over the Calvin Ridley role. Calvin Ridley had one of the best roles for fantasy, but he couldn't catch the ball last year or stay in bounds in the red zone or in the end zone. So Brian Thomas, I think he make just as many big plays as Christian Watson can. We saw it at LSU. He scored the most touchdowns of 20 plus air yards. And one of the teams that wants to air the ball out is the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I just, again, going to the matchup, that's kind of the coin flip or the ultimate decision because both guys are super explosive. But I just think this Dolphins Jaguars game could go absolutely bonkers where the Eagles Packers, there's a lot of weirdness about this game. It's being played in Brazil, just adding in layers of uncertainty. And I think that the path to targets is potentially a little bit tougher for Christian Watson, at least in week one with all those Packers receivers healthy, where Brian Thomas has a starting role as the X receiver opposite Gabe Davis. I don't know if he'll be super productive this week, but I know he's going to out-target Gabe Davis because Gabe Davis can't command targets. I know I'm wearing his jersey.
I was going to say, you're wearing his jersey.
Yes, because it's a bit. Because he still can't command targets.
All right, let's go to some flex debates here. So let's do running back versus receiver, even though you can tend to start tight ends and flex as well. Generally, you want to do running back or wide receiver. First one, Raheem Mostert versus George Pickens. Erickson, what do you think about that one?
So I'm compiling my list of my season-long fades that will make me feel dumb and after week one. And Raheem Mostert's probably at the top of the list because, look, he's healthy. He's still starting running back for the Miami Dolphins. So, yeah, I just talked about how much I like this Jaguars-Dolphins game. You got to start Raheem Mostert while he's healthy, while he's upright, while he's still the RB1 for the Miami Dolphins. And I'm willing to take the plunge on the running backs for this Steelers team, not the receivers. Not George Pickens, not this week. Again, we're going to get headlines after week one. George Pickens, guys, I don't know what you want to do. I can't control where the ball goes. I can see this being a George Pickens. Week 2 is going to be the George Pickens squeaky wheel game. So we'll talk about him next week. But if he's going to be facing A.J. Terrell, they want to run the football. They're playing on the road. This is not a good spot for George Pickens. He's going to be volatile all year long, up and down production, just like he was last year. So I would wait and see with George Pickens. Just play Mostert, the running back, in a great matchup.
Yeah, the Ringer guys have been all over this summer. Like, is there any player you're going to feel dumber for having faded after week one if Mostert does exactly what he did all last year and has like 80 yards and 2 touchdowns in week one? It's going to be like, why did we let him fall to like the 80s in every draft? That's why I wanted to include him here, honestly, is because like, again, he's somebody we didn't really talk about all that much this offseason. All the talk was about Devon Achane, who I know Fitz is very high on. Mostert was so good last year, and I could feel a little dumb at the end of week one if he looks like he did last year. Fitz, I know you are an Achane guy. Are you picking Pickens in that case over Mostert this week?
Finally, Erickson and I are on the same page. I'm taking Raheem Mostert. I don't expect him to score 21 more touchdowns, but I do think the touchdown outlook is still pretty bright for him this year as long as he can stay healthy. And he's healthy right now. So, I kind of expect a high-scoring game. We saw the Dolphins Chargers produce 70 points in week one of last year. Dolphins won that one 36-34. I think we're going to see points in Dolphins Jags and, good outlook for Mostert. I think an anytime touchdown bet could pay off here. And I want to monitor this Steelers offense from afar for week one.
I totally agree with you on that one. I mean, he could regress to cutting his touchdowns in half this season, and he's still in double digits. Like, that's how many he had last year. So, we are all in agreement on that one. How about David Montgomery versus Stefon Diggs? Fitz, we'll start with you.
Really tough call. I'm going to go with Diggs here. Last year when we sort of saw the running back usage normalize for the Lions after Montgomery came back from that midseason rib injury, he averaged about 13, 14 carries a game. I think that's probably where he lands this year, but it's not going to be like heavy doses of he's not going to. The first 4 games of 2023, David Montgomery averaged 22 carries a game. We are not seeing that kind of usage this year. The Jahmyr Gibbs genie is out of the bottle. So we're not going to see Montgomery much in the passing game either. I feel like they're going to want to integrate Diggs in the Texans offense right away. I could see a double-digit target game for Diggs, so I'm going to go with him over Monty.
Erickson, what do you think on this one?
I'm playing Montgomery because I think, again, I disagree with Fitz where I think we're going to get something similar to Montgomery to start the year like we did last year. And I think it's going to be the exact same thing where, oh my God, why did I draft Gibbs so high when I love David Montgomery? And it's not because Gibbs isn't talented. It's because he's been hurt all preseason, all training camp. And all the reports I read about that was they were integrating this new role for him, but to temper expectations to open the year because he hasn't been there. They haven't been able to integrate his new role into the offense. So what are they going to do against the Rams without Aaron Donald is pound the rock with the best offensive line with Dave Montgomery. So I think it's going to be the Spider-Man meme where we did it last year. We drafted Gibbs really high, faded Dave Montgomery, and then we watch week one. Dave Montgomery scores 2 more touchdowns, leads the team in rushing again. And we're like, why did we do this to ourselves again? So I would take advantage. I think Dave Montgomery is going to be very productive to start the year. Gibbs, maybe not so much, but not to say Gibbs is going to be bad the entire season. I think that his production will pick up as he gets more integrated, like when he's fully healthy. So that's just the way that I'm viewing that backfield.
Fitz, Zamir White or Xavier Worthy?
Zamir. I just think he's safer. Like, we know the Raiders want to run the ball a lot, and they did down the stretch with Zamir White. So while I don't really think there's much pass catching upside with Zamir, I think there's a good chance he gets close to 20 carries.
By the way, Fitz, you got in my head the other day with like Xavier versus Xavier Worthy. And now every time I start to read his name, I like almost stumble over it, even though I'm like reasonably sure it is just Xavier. You got in my head
You're
with
welcome.
that one. Erickson, Worthy or White?
I will take the record holder of the fastest 40-yard dash, rookie receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs, who will not be named because I don't know how to pronounce it either. So I'm not going to take that.
I believe it's Xavier, but Fitz was asking on the other show about like just in general, how do you pronounce that name, Xavier or Xavier? And now every time I read it, it's in the back of my mind. So yeah, thank you again to Fitz for that.
I'm going with Worthy. Zamir White just scares me from a game script. What if the Raiders fall down 10-0 because Gardner Minshew throws a pick six? Is Zamir White on the field anymore if he doesn't catch passes? So I don't think his workload is secure as some of these other running backs we've talked about. I talked about Brian Robinson. I have concerns about the game script with him. So I definitely have concerns about Zamir White and his potential game script. So I'm going to take the upside with the flashy rookie. Marquise Brown's not playing. So I think that they're ready to go with Xavier Worthy, and he can deliver on one play. He could get more fantasy points on one play than Zamir White could get on 20 touches.
I don't think you're wrong. I think the Chiefs
want to... It's so weird to say that, but you're not wrong.
I think the Chiefs do want to come out and like kind of unleash Worthy right off the bat and be like, look at this fun new toy we have. Like I think they are really excited about this fun new toy they got for Patrick Mahomes. And I think Patrick Mahomes wants to play with his new toy on a big stage. Like I think they're going to really kind of want to unleash him and take a shot or two downfield with him and run up some design plays for him. I think that's going to be the plan tonight. Again, as you keep bringing up, targeting Nate Wiggins, even though I think Wiggins is quite good. One more flex here. Chuba Hubbard versus Calvin Ridley. An eye-opening debate if you look at the draft rankings, but here we are week one. Again, this is one of those names I mentioned earlier. Like now that you're in week one, don't think so much about the draft rankings. Chuba Hubbard is starting running back for Carolina. So that carries a lot more weight than it did maybe in draft season when we think he's not going to be started the whole season. Erickson, Hubbard or Ridley? Who do you like?
This one, I'm going to go with the running back, Chuba Hubbard. I think that he's going to be a bell cow. I am not afraid of the Saints team whatsoever. I think that they're going to feature Hubbard a ton. I think that doesn't matter what the game script is because he's involved in the passing game. And as an early down rusher, I think that the Panthers offense is going to be improved with Dave Canales calling the shots. Canales is familiar with Dennis Allen, the Saints defense. He played against them twice last year as part of the Buccaneers offense. So I think Hubbard's the guy. And with Ridley on the road, against a really good Bears defense behind a shaky offensive line with the Will Levis sack machine. Tyler Boyd's there. DeAndre Hopkins is there. This, to me, seems like Ridley's going to have up games. This doesn't seem like that kind of game for him. This seems like a down game for Calvin Ridley. So I'm going to take the touches with Hubbard.
Yeah, Erickson said this well. I want to monitor. The Titans are another offense I want to monitor from afar early in the season. And Chuba should have something close to workhorse usage. He played a lot more than Miles Sanders with the starters in the preseason for the Panthers. And I think the Saints were like 23rd in DVOA against the run last year.
Let's do a quarterback one here. And it's more along the lines of if you're maybe in a super flex or if you really just waited on quarterback and kind of got stuck with some later round guys. Because I felt like in a 1 QB league, the starters are fairly obvious. So I wanted to look kind of in a deeper format with the quarterback spot. Geno Smith versus Justin Herbert. Fitz, what would you do here?
Herbert, snap call.
Erickson?
I'm taking Geno Smith.
I really like Geno this year, and I kind of think he might come out firing from the. I love the offensive coordinator change. I love the weapons he has. I'm kind of all in on Geno. I was very in on Herbert early. The foot injury does have me a little bit concerned. I'm less concerned about the offense that he's in. I think they'll throw enough. They've never, Greg Roman has never had an arm as talented as Justin Herbert, but I kind of like Geno Smith a lot this season. And
I also think the game environment, I mean, we talked about how we like the Broncos running backs this week. I just think that the Broncos have a better chance of pushing Seattle than the Raiders do to push the Chargers. The Raiders don't want to push anybody. They just want to run the ball. That's what they want to do and play defense.
The thing is, I agree. The thing is, too, though, like, I think Seattle this year, like, you can't think of them as a Pete Carroll team anymore. Like, I think they're going to want to push the ball regardless of what the game script is. Like, I think that's going to be their identity is we have 3 good receivers. We have a quarterback we like. We have an offensive coordinator that likes to air it out. Like, I think that's going to be their identity this year. I'm all in on all the Seahawks players, quite honestly. Tight end, Erickson, Brock Bowers versus Taysom Hill.
Can't believe you brought this question up. It's an amazing debate to end the show. For me, it's Taysom Hill because we're hoping Brock Bowers gets anything close to Taysom Hill level usage with the Las Vegas Raiders. Look, Hill was listed as the tight end 1 on the depth chart just recently. Juwan Johnson's listed behind Foster Moreau. He's coming off the injury. So I don't know what his role is going to be in this offense. There's one guy that Dennis Allen likes on his team, and his name is Taysom Hill. So he's the head coach. He's the one that is in charge of who gets the ball. And last time Hill played the Carolina Panthers, he had 75 rushing yards in week 2. So I'm going to roll the dice with Taysom Hill.
Yeah, I mean, what's more likely? Taysom Hill gets a rushing touchdown or a rookie tight end in his first career game with a poor quarterback situation.
Off a foot injury he's been dealing with as well.
Yeah, I mean, it seems ridiculous to ask, but that's why I wanted to ask it. Fitz, you've been kind of on Brock Bowers' corner this whole offseason. Do you like him over Taysom Hill in week 1?
I do like him over Taysom Hill in week 1, Worm. And I say this with the caveat that I think the over on 15.5 rushing yards for Taysom Hill is the best bet of the week. As Erickson pointed out, I mean, the Panthers, he had a season high 75 rushing yards against the Panthers in his 1 game against them last year. And the Panthers were dead last in DVOA against the run. But I mean, Brock Bowers is the best tight end prospect to ever enter the NFL. And he is going to be used all over the place. They're going to line him up out wide, in line, in the slot, in the backfield. I know the foot injury is a little concerning, but I think he's going to be good to go. And he is going to announce his presence with authority in week 1.
Based on consensus rankings, I wouldn't be surprised if I end up asking about Taysom Hill a lot in this segment on this show during the season, because he's just going to be an interesting guy to talk about each week, depending on how they use him. Since this is a start-sit show, I just want to remind everybody to say goodbye to start-sit dilemmas with FantasyPros Start-Sit Assistant. Within seconds, you'll know exactly who to play for optimal results each week. Leveraging insights from numerous experts, the Start-Sit Assistant aligns your lineup decisions with the top minds in fantasy football, giving you a competitive edge. Maximize your lineup's potential with just a few clicks. Head to fantasypros.com/myplaybook and make winning decisions in no time. All right, guys, we'll get out of here with the touchdown calls contest. This is how we're going to end the show every single week. Make sure you head to Discord and participate in this contest. Kelly does a great job running this along with Mayor on the Fantasy Pros Discord side. There is a TD calls channel, so you can hop in there. You can fill out your own Google form each and every week and try and win some really cool prizes. The way we want to do it on the show is we're going to do 1 running back, 1 wide receiver, and 1 tight end, and we are going to rotate who takes what position each week. So for this week, Erickson will have a running back, Fitz will have a receiver, I will have a tight end. And by the way, in the actual contest, you cannot repeat names. We might not stick to that on the show. It's going to be kind of tricky with us rotating who's picking what position each week to remember what's been picked all the time. So we'll be lenient about that on the show. But for the actual contest, you only get each guy once. We'll try and think of it through that frame of mind when we are doing this on the show. Erickson, who is your running back for this week's touchdown calls contest?
It's Bengals RB1, at least for this week, Zack Moss, because I don't know how many opportunities he's going to get to be in such a smash spot for the Bengals at home against the Patriots without Chris Barrymore. I think that Zack Moss, he can fall in the end zone once or twice. So I'm going to go Zack Moss because I don't know how many weeks we're going to get with him with this touchdown upside.
Between Higgins and Moss, you're really picking on the Patriots here.
Am I wrong?
No. Fitz, who's your receiver?
If you start off in a game of horse, you do not start off with a baseline 3-pointer or a half-court shot. You start off with a layup. I'm going to take a layup here. It's Mike Evans against the Washington Commanders. I mean, Evans is a touchdown machine. The Commanders probably have the worst group of cornerbacks in the NFL, and they gave up a league high 39 touchdown passes last year. I think Evans gets into the end zone in week 1.
This isn't a survivor contest. You're allowed to get one wrong and obviously keep playing throughout the year, but it's kind of that survivor contest mentality of like everybody tries to pick the team that, oh, they have a good matchup, but they're actually bad. We just don't want to have to pick them again. And, we want to save the good teams. Sometimes it's smart to just take the good teams and let everybody else kind of make mistakes and get themselves out. And that's kind of what you're doing, in a different version of that with Mike Evans here. For me at tight end, Trey McBride, I was on him all offseason as one of my favorite. He was basically my favorite tight end to draft where he was going in drafts. At cost, he was easily my favorite value at the position this year. I think it's a good matchup against a banged up Bills defense. So I'm really excited about that. I think the Cardinals are going to come out very explosive this season. And I'm just really buying in on the elite players in this offense. And so I want to kind of start off really strong with a tight end that I believed in pretty much more than anybody else this whole season, in terms of the other tight ends. Not that I was the analyst who believed in him more than anybody else, because that would be Debro. But I really just love McBride this year, and I love this offense, and I love the matchup. So I figured I would go with him. So our 3 guys: Zack Moss at running back, Mike Evans at receiver, Trey McBride at tight end. Erickson, any final thoughts? Just heading into the season. I mean, again, we said at the top of the show, I'm just super excited. I think it's going to be an awesome season, honestly. There's so many fun storylines. There's a 3-peat. There's all these young quarterbacks. There's all these established quarterbacks who are trying to take down Mahomes. I just think it's going to be an awesome year.
We're going to see a lot of rookie wide receivers break out in week 1.
Fitz, any other final week 1 thoughts?
Yeah, for a few more hours, I'm right about everything. And I'm going to savor that until
take advantage while you can.
I look like a complete fool, within a couple days' time.
All right, we'll get out of here on that pleasant note. For Erickson and Fitz, I'm Ryan Wormeli. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you again next Thursday.